بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome. Hope you guys all had a wonderful Ramadan and a beautiful Eid. Belated Eid Mubarak to you all. So the topic that I have for today is just on anchoring ourselves during these times. I know it's very heavy for a lot of people, rightfully so. And a lot of us are really overwhelmed with how to respond during times like this. I mean, it was already heavy after October 7th. It was already heavier after a year. It was already heavier after a year and a half, right? Or almost a year and a half. So it's becoming, people are getting into this space of almost like checking out in a way because the pain is too much. The pain is too overwhelming. And this can become a common response that people have, where to avoid the pain, the collective pain that we're all in, that we check out. And it's a very interesting experience that we're all going through, and we're walking around with these images of genocide in our mind, with the hearts heavy, with pain towards everything that we're going through, and yet having to still show up day to day, and navigate the things that are on our plate, our responsibilities. They don't go away, right? So today I want to share with you a few important anchoring tips and points that we need to hold on to during these times that can help us respond effectively and can help us pass our test, because it's not just the test of the people of Palestine. We've been saying this from the beginning. They are not just the ones being tested. We are being tested too. Our patience is being tested. Our sincerity, ikhlas, is being tested. And you can't fall back on your illusions anymore. You can't fall back on your comforts anymore. Especially in Western society, we're so used to being programmed by this culture of you do you, and as long as your life is good, you're good, and this is something that even Muslims are affected by. Think of how many Muslims are disconnected from the needs of their brothers and sisters in their communities, and just even in their own families, right? Because we live in this culture of, hey, as long as your life is good, you're good. You have the luxury of checking out. You don't see this a lot, by the way, in the Middle East. You don't see this a lot when you go to Eastern countries. They don't live by that concept of you do you, and you just check out, and you can just look away and focus on your life, and as long as you're not hurting anyone, that's okay. This is what we live by here in the West, right? And that comes with a price, and we're affected by that. And so we're living in a time, I think, where a lot of people in the West are waking up to this reality that we are connected. Even though it's such a simple reality, we are connected. And I think that's why it's even more, it's very difficult for a lot of people in the West to deal with what's happening, because we're so used to this idea that if our external circumstances are good, I'm good. Constantly we're trying to create comfort around us, constantly trying to chase comfort around us. And so we live by this notion in the West where, like, if I can create an externally comfortable experience for myself, then I am good. And now we live in a time where every time we look outside of us, it's not comfortable. In the West, things are unstable and things are shakier than ever. And a lot of people are living now with this, fear of instability, right? And chaos. And every time you go on social media, there's something happening. And so we're overwhelmed. The images that we're seeing are affecting us. And so, we're forced to look deep within ourselves and assess, where our heart is at, how connected our heart is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how attached we are to this dunya. So you can't really, in times like this and in times of chaos, you can't fall back on your attachments to the dunya. It won't help you. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us. In the Quran, He gives us the example of those who are on a boat, on a ship. And when the waters become chaotic, they believe in Allah and they ask for help. And then when they're back when Allah saves them from that, they go back into their disbelief. So when there are chaotic times, you can't hold on to anything but truth. You can't. So you become really awakened to this fact that maybe the reason I'm not able to function well during these times is because I've been so attached to the dunya. And I want you to assess that within yourself. And I'm not talking about the natural heartbrokenness that we're all feeling. That's a given, right? But I'm talking about, this need to check out, and this need to, this inability to show up during these times effectively, because you don't know how to function in a world where your external circumstances are chaotic. That just shows you that you live by the notion that externally I should always be comfortable. Externally, there should always be this kind of stability, but that's not a given in our world, in our path. It's not. And if you visit overseas, they don't live by that notion. I guess, because SubhanAllah, a lot of our countries have been in chaos for years. So I just want to go over a few things that we can do during these times to help anchor ourselves and to help strengthen ourselves spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and to help us show up in the most important and powerful way. Because this is not the time to check out. This is not the time to, to pretend like nothing is happening. This is not the time to go back to your comforts and the attachments of the dunya and to say, you know what, as long as I'm good and everything is happening is not affecting me personally, it's okay. We talk a lot about white privilege in our society today, and which is a very real thing. But what we don't talk about also is our own privilege, the privilege to check out, the luxury that a lot of us have to check out, to just turn off our phones or to log out or to say, you know what, I'm going to just not, look at any of these things, for a while. And I'm not saying you should always be on social media. I really genuinely believe our brains are not designed to absorb all of these videos and images of the most horrific things while being in comfort. I feel that's a very unsettling experience that I don't think our brains were designed for. To just keep absorbing, and then go back to a reality that's very different than what you just absorbed. So, but I do think we should check our privilege and the luxury that we have, and also increase this concern in front of Allah of, what will I say when Allah asks me? That is what awakens you, by the way. That is what really makes you show up in a time like this in the most beautiful way, is you're so connected to, how will I answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we want to be intentional. Even when you disconnect, let's say, from social media, it's not for the reason of checking out. It's not for the reason of pretending like nothing is happening. It's for a higher reason. It's for you to make sure you're being effective. It's to make sure that you're showing up well. It's to make sure that you're not neglectful of your prayers and the things that you have to be doing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first reminder that I have for you is, in times like this, you need to not only make sure that your prayers are being done, but to make sure that you're rectifying the condition of your prayers. If the condition of your prayers are not rectified, expect that you will not be able to process what is happening in the world. If the condition of your prayers is not a nourishing one, expect that you are not going to be equipped to show up powerfully during times like this. Our prayers are not just a source of strength, a source of receiving what you need from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're also a source of comfort. It's what replenishes you. It's what nourishes you. It's what equips you. It's what helps you process what you witness in the world. You cannot process what is happening in Gaza without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot process anything in this dunya while being cut off, basically cutting the very sila, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the very link that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you to stay connected to Him so that you could receive what you need to thrive in this world, and that is prayer. Your 5 appointments with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of times people are waiting to feel a certain way so that they could navigate their life. And they're neglecting action and rectifying their prayers. Action in many things, but I'm talking now about prayer. You have to start with prayer. You have to. And you have to force yourself to reevaluate your prayer. Don't just keep praying without evaluating what is going on that's disconnecting you from the quality of your prayers, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I mean by that is that if you feel like it's becoming clear to you that you are not being nourished, that you are praying and you're disconnected, you're not present with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're just going through the motions, and it's become an exercise for you where you check it off, and it's become clear to you that this has been happening for days or weeks or months, don't just let it be a realization. Tell yourself, I have to fix this, and I have to make sure that I rectify the very links I have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if I am to be able to process anything that's happening in our world, or to be able to function effectively, or to be able to show up in such chaotic times. You know, and the thing is that people unfortunately wait until months and years have passed of this to actually start doing the work, when it becomes so heavy to rectify your prayers. So if you notice, even like in a day, for example, evaluate your prayers at the end of the day. Evaluate your prayers at the end of every prayer, but at the end of the day, say, how many prayers did I actually were nourishing? How many prayers was I actually present with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many prayers did I actually walk away replenished and ready to take on the dunya and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in front of me? But if at the end of the day you feel like you can't even remember your prayers, number one, you did them but you can't remember them. That means you can't even remember the quality of them. And you just were going through the motions, that's a problem. And so you always want to be on alert for losing the quality of your prayers. Because if that goes, everything else goes. If your presence in prayer goes, your presence with everything else will go. If the quality of your prayers are diminished, the quality of everything else you do becomes diminished, and vice versa. If your presence with Allah in your prayers increases and improves, you will find that you become more present with everything else in your life and the people in your life. But if you are not present with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find that it's very hard for you to be present with everything else. You know, so one of the fastest ways that you can increase your presence with Allah is to have reverence for Allah when you are in prayer, before you enter prayer and in your prayer. Reverence is this awe, this respect, this humbleness, this humility that you have in front of Allah as you're praying. And if you can't understand, sometimes it's hard to like conceptualize this, right? What does that mean? Well, I want you to think about somebody, you know, who the people consider honorable in the world and respectful in the world, or not even, let's say somebody famous. People sometimes show more reverence to someone who's famous, who's not even that respected, than they do in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just imagine someone, give me somebody. I don't know, let's imagine somebody coming Obama to visit. Let's take someone we might not even agree with, like, yeah, Obama, right? Is he someone that we put on a pedestal or respect? No. But let's say you had a meeting with him. How would you show up to that meeting? You would have reverence. You would have respect. If you were invited to the White House, even though we disagree with so many things going on, you would have reverence in that meeting. Would you wear your normal day clothes? You wouldn't. You know, even taking time before you pray to adjust what you're wearing, it makes such a big difference in your prayer. It's the little things that you do before prayer. Like if I, for example, put on my, like if I'm at home and I put on my prayer, himar, and I notice that it's inside out, I'll flip it. I'll take the time to flip it, because I'll tell myself, if I was going out and my clothes was inside out, would I fix it? And I would say yes. Then how can I not fix it in front of Allah? And wallahi changes my prayer, because already I'm like, I'm preparing myself mentally of who I'm standing in front of. We think it's the big things, but it's the little things, you know? If you're going to Allah in a way that you would not go in front of the people, then you're losing your reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing is, would you be late to a meeting? You said Obama. Would you be late to a meeting with Obama, sister? No. Yeah, you wouldn't, right? Even though, subhanAllah, He's not going to intercede on your behalf, right? But you wouldn't be late. So if you want to think about reverence, think about how you would act when someone that the world perceives as grand standing in front of you. And then remember what you say before you start every prayer and you start every rak'ah. What do you say? God is greater. Allahu Akbar. And that's really essentially what should center you when you're standing in front of prayer, is standing in front of Allah and you stand to pray. Is that whatever my concerns, whatever I'm leaving, whatever I'm detaching from in this moment to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever's bothering me, whatever's concerning me, right? Whoever I think has power in this world, when I just got off, let's say, social media, and you're thinking about all these things that are happening and the people who are abusing their power, and you stand in front of Allah and you remember who is greater. And you remember who is more powerful. And then you humble yourself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have that humility in front of Him. Watch how your prayer changes. The reason that many of us are not present in prayers because we lost our reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, we're losing our reverence everywhere. This is why if you've been to my talks, I'll always say, let's remember our reverence for just the spaces that we're in. Our reverence for seeking ilm. Even when you go to the masjid, you just have reverence for what you are seeking. There's a reverence for everything that you're doing. You should have a reverence for the things that matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So like I always remind you guys to renew your intentions when you come into any space. This is a way that you show reverence, by sitting up, by making sure you're not just like, chilling at the beach here, These are things we have lost. The etiquette that we should have in classes, in any learning space, in the masjid. We're losing these things. Etiquette the child should have towards their parent, the etiquette that we should have towards our elders, the etiquette that we should have towards our teachers when we're learning in any learning space. We're losing these things because we lost our reverence, we lost our humility, we lost our etiquette. And so start reviving it, especially in prayer, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Start longing for prayer. Long for prayer. Like even now, I want you to think about, I long for my next appointment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just even saying that to yourself will shift your heart. I long for my next appointment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we need to rectify our prayers during this time. A lot of people are asleep. A lot of people are checked out, overwhelmed by what they're seeing in their phones, and then their prayers are not replenishing them. And so it's like the same cycle over and over again. Something has to change. And this is what I want to prepare you for, is if you've been feeling this way, and let's say you're listening today and you're saying, you know what, I don't want any more days like this. Well, I want you to be prepared for discomfort. If you want this to change and you want to be replenished and you want to feel awake and you want to feel utilized, you want to feel like you are showing up effectively in the time that we're living in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then if you're going to make a shift, be prepared for discomfort. Meaning what? Anything worth having doesn't come easy. Let's say you're going to go approach your next salah with presence. You have to actually say, I'm going to fight, for this salah. I'm going to fight for it. Meaning like every time I feel like I'm drifting off into the future or the past, or I'm going to bring myself back. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to just succumb to my mind and succumb to my thoughts and succumb to my distractions in this prayer. So you have to be intentional. You have to force yourself to wake up. You cannot wait to feel a certain way for you to do what you need to do. So many times, I cannot begin to tell you how so many people in our times are programmed with this notion that I need to feel a certain way before I can show up and fix the things I need to fix in my life. This is so wrong. Like for example, we people will tell me, I've been procrastinating. Can you please tell me what I need to do so like I don't feel this way so I could not procrastinate. And I always say, if you don't want to feel this way, you have to stop procrastinating. It's literally, we literally believe that I have to feel a certain way so I could stop procrastinating. But guess what? The second you just tackle one thing on your to-do list, you feel differently. Even if it's the smallest item on your to-do list, you are shifted. Isn't that true? So what does that tell you? Your behaviors give you a return emotionally. It's not always, yes, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at times, He gives you motivation. He inspires you. You come to a class, you feel inspired. And this is why I always say, if you learn anything and you feel inspired, or you meet someone during the day and they affect your heart in a positive direction, or you feel like your heart shifted throughout the day for whatever reason, and if you don't follow that inspiration, that motivation, that positive feeling with a positive action, you will lose the gift that Allah gave you. You did not maximize on the gift Allah gave you. And this happens. How many times have you watched a lecture and you felt so good after? So many times, right? Only to let it pass and you do nothing with it. Only to find yourself stuck again and feeling like, how am I going to change? How am I going to fix my prayers? How am I going to not procrastinate? And then you get overwhelmed again. You know why? Because you let that dopamine rush go to waste. You see, every time you learn something new, your brain releases dopamine, that feel-good hormone. But if you don't follow it with action, you have let that dopamine rush go to waste. And then excessive dopamine production that isn't followed by action leads to people who don't grow, who are stuck mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And this is what's happening in our world. Excessive dopamine, no action. So give me something else to learn. Give me something new. Give me a new feeling so I could show up, but then there's no showing up. So we are worshiping our emotions in the times we live in. We're waiting to constantly feel something to do. The hardest part, but the people who truly grow in this world are the people who force themselves to do what they need to do regardless of how they feel. Don't wait. And wallahi, shaitan will make it feel like the hardest thing in the world, the heaviest thing in the world. But once you take an action towards Allah, a step towards Allah, Allah helps you. And He helps you carry that weight. And you're like, okay, it's not as hard as I thought it was. I always give this example, I hike a lot, and subhanAllah, one of the things that I learned is that when you are far away from a hill, the hill seems so steep. And it's unbelievable, actually. It almost feels like magic. As you approach this hill, you're like, how is it not that steep? How does it feel like it's not that high anymore? Right? But when you're far, it looks so high. It looks so overwhelming. It looks impossible that you would reach the top. But you just take it step by step and you enjoy the journey and you enjoy the way there, and you find that it looks lower and lower as you are climbing it. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. You walk towards Him, and what you thought was impossible becomes possible. You ask Him for help, and what you thought you couldn't overcome, you are able to overcome. But it's not in the ways that you imagine. It's not in these big moments. It's in these little gifts that He gives you. These little moments where you shift, where you do something that you haven't been able to do, where you fight your nafs. So do not wait to feel something to show up to your life. Do not wait. Do not wait to feel what you need to feel to rectify your prayer. Start with the next prayer that we have. Start with the next appointment that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing that I have as a reminder, and I won't go too much into this because I've mentioned it before several in recent halakas, which is anchor yourself in Allah's words. You cannot process what's happening in the world while being disconnected from Allah's words. Because in the words of the people and the words of social media and all the negative narratives and false narratives of the world, and even your own false and negative narratives, they start to overpower you. And this is why you need an anchoring in the Quran, because then Allah's words become the most powerful force within you, and they start to override and become more powerful than everything else. Okay? Within you and outside of you. So number 3, don't check out. Don't fall asleep. Stay connected. We're talking about being spiritually awake right now, right? And what is being spiritually awake is that you are connected to what is happening. You're connected to what you're doing. You're connected to your actions. Because think about what is physical sleep. But when you're sleeping, the external doesn't go away, but you're just disconnected from it. That's what sleep is. It's a physical disconnect from your physical world. And so spiritual sleep, when you feel asleep spiritually, it's not that the external world and all your blessings and everything goes away. No, you're just disconnected from them. You're just disconnected from the beauty in the present. You're disconnected from what Allah's doing for you, but you're also disconnected from what you cannot see. And this also contributes to being spiritually asleep, is that you forget that there's al-ghaib. You forget that there is occurrences in a world that you do not see. You forget that there's a veil. You forget that Allah is planning and He has His wisdom and He's doing things for His ummah that we cannot see. So this is also being spiritually asleep, is that you're just disconnected from all these realities. You're just walking through life. You're physically awake, but you're asleep spiritually. You're checked out spiritually. You're disconnected. So we want to ignite a connection to what is happening for us and what is happening, what Allah has put in our present, starting with our prayer, because if you are disconnected from your prayer, you're disconnected from everything else. Next thing is, ask Allah to be utilized. You know, it can get really overwhelming looking at what's happening in the world and feeling helpless. Have sincerity with Allah and go to Him in your, just you and Allah. Just go to Him, you and Allah, and say, Ya Allah, please utilize me during these times. Please utilize me. Because He may utilize you differently than He may utilize you. Please, Ya Allah, show me a way to be useful during these times for my brothers and sisters. And do not replace me with someone who will be more sincere. Meaning, like, help me be sincere in showing up during these times so that what you do is accepted. So what you do is for Allah alone and not for anything else. So you have to be careful of that during these times where you can be showing up and doing good, but it's not for Allah. That's why it has to start with your alone time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when no one else is around and it's just you and Him, and you have this, concern, this like awe, reverence, concern that, you want to be utilized. You want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use you, and you don't want to go back to Him and say you didn't do anything. And that's going to start something for you. That's going to awaken your heart, and it's going to start, okay, well, am I making dua? Am I praying? Am I getting up for tahajjud? To make dua for them? Am I even able to just basic comfort, to leave the basic comfort of my bed in the last third of the night and pray for my brothers and sisters in Gaza? Think about, and I want you to think about this, we have a hard time with asking ourselves this, because we're so attached to public efforts over private efforts. And don't get me wrong, we need public efforts in our times, of course. We have to publicly stand up against injustice. But I think that if you're publicly showing up at the expense of privately showing up in front of Allah, that's a problem. And a lot of times people don't want to hear this. But if you are publicly showing up, but you're not making dua, your prayers are not on time, you are neglectful of what Allah called you to, you haven't even been able to leave the comfort of your bed to do tahajjud and pray, then you have to ask yourself why. Right? Makes sense, right? So we want to be people who have the courage and the strength to publicly show up, of course, but we want to be stronger even privately. Show Allah how much we care about our brothers and sisters. Make dua for them like you would make dua if it was your own mother or child, or that kind of connection that we're missing, by the way, especially in the West. I'm telling you, when you look at how the people of Gaza deal with each other over there, how they show up for each other, sometimes I wonder, may Allah protect us all, but if something like that happened here, I wonder how we in the West would show up for each other. Because we live in a culture of just you do you. Me and my family, we're good. They fight for each other. And I want us to think about, are your hearts connected to the hearts of other people in your community? And not just your own circle. I mean, I just think of like how many people complain of how cliquey we are, even in the community spaces. As long as people got their clique, that's it. They don't need to reach out. They don't need to think about anyone else. So, but you know what? The more you are attached to Allah, and the more that the akhirah becomes a reality, the more you do have that desperation in your dua, asking Allah to help your brothers and sisters, because you know that you could easily be in their shoes, and it's only by the grace of Allah that you aren't. And that's the heart of a believer. They don't just know that we are one body. They feel that, they know and they experience it in their hearts that we are one body. So when we see anything happening to our brothers and sisters, it's as if it is happening to us, and we feel the pain. And that is actually the difference between sympathy and empathy, by the way. Sympathy is you look at something and you're like, that's so bad. I feel bad that they're going through that. Empathy is that you know that you could easily have been one of them. And you feel that as if it is you. And you know that it is only by the grace of Allah that it's not you. And it's not your loved ones. So this is not the time to check out. This is not the time to pretend that this isn't happening so that you can have the luxury of getting on with your day. No, this is the time to wake up, to awaken your heart, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow you to respond effectively and to be utilized in a way that is sincere for His sake alone, to revive empathy in our hearts. We have a lot to learn from them on how to show up for our brothers and sisters, how our hearts should be connected. We cannot live on the notion of, or the belief of, you do you anymore. Of, as long as my life is good, I'm good. No. What's happening in our world is actually showing you so clearly that whatever happens to others eventually reaches you. What's happening in our world is showing us so clearly how all these years, a lot of us had our head down. We didn't think about Gaza, even though it was happening. I always say this, it wasn't October 7th. October 7th wasn't the first time we knew about what was happening over there. But a lot of us pretended that it wasn't, to get on with our day, to get on with our comforts, right? So it's very easy to say, oh, look at what's happening to us in the Ummah. It's because of outside forces. And very hard to say, what role did we as an Ummah play? And what role did we as Muslims play? And what role did I play? How many times did I make dua for Gaza before October 7th, for example? It's a question we can ask ourselves. Very hard, right? It's the same thing in our own life. When a problem happens, very easy to go outward. Very easy to blame others. Why? Because it protects your ego. It soothes your ego. This is why we say, I always say there's a progression to, disorders. And let's take narcissistic personality disorder. What is their most common tactic? Blaming others. They can never ever say, I did something, ever. So we have to always, as Muslims, look at, Ya Allah, first of all, one thing I like to say is, Ya Allah, please forgive me. Please forgive us, for what's happening in Gaza. Because Because you just think about how we failed them and how weak we are as an ummah right now. And so going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just saying, Ya Allah, please forgive me, allow me to be sincere, allow me to show up. You're awakening your heart in front of Allah. And you're reviving yourself in front of Allah. And you're saying, you know what, it's time that I detach from this dunya. It's time that I wake up and anchor myself in your truth. It's time that I awaken spiritually. What commands did you ask of me, Allah, that I did not obey yet? What prescriptions did you give me that I am neglecting? That the people of Gaza are upholding more than us. You know, a lot of these doctors that come back from their visits to Gaza, one of the most common things they'll say is that they don't skip their prayers. Like they will care about their prayers even when they are, you know, in the worst conditions. Think about how easy it has become for so many people to give excuses for their prayers while living in comfort. And we're so afraid to be like, you know, of course we should always be, you know, kind and compassionate when it comes to advising others, but how easy we water down our faith here and say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I see this. If they think it's not okay to miss their prayers, how can we think it's okay to miss our prayers? If they have this reverence for their meetings with Allah in that condition, how can we not have reverence for our meetings with Allah every day in the comfort of our homes? It should make us, you know, really like question ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. So this is the time to wake up and ask Allah, Ya Allah, please utilize me. Please allow me to be sincere. The next one is, this is the time to fight your nafs. This is the time to fight our nafs. You know, fight for your faith, fight for your iman during these times. Don't succumb. We have so many things that are happening now that is making people, you know, fall into doubt and despair and hopelessness. Fight for your iman. You fight for a lot of things in this world, right? You forget that you also have to fight to keep this most beautiful thing, which is your iman, the most important thing, which is your iman, your faith. A lot of people fight. They so many battles they don't need to be fighting. But then they neglect fighting to hold on to the treasure that is iman, that is faith, that is Islam. So this is a time to assess how you are attached, the things that you're attached to that don't help you, that would be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, checking your own privilege, you know, checking how we've looked away in certain things, you know, that we shouldn't be. And don't wait to feel something to act, meaning like, it's not, oh, I don't feel like it, so I don't show up. No, fight your nafs. Fight for it. Don't succumb. Don't surrender to your nafs. Don't surrender to your just emotions, which are fleeting. Emotions are states. They are not who you are. And then lastly, patience with what is happening in the world. Patience with what is happening in Gaza, with what is happening in the world. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, there are so many situations and difficulties that he had to just be patient with. The time when his own ummah, his own brothers and sisters were being starved to death, right? And like, imagine just his pain watching this, that, you know, and not just that they're being starved to death, but also knowing that they're being tested because of a message that like you have responsibility for, you know. Like, think about that. Think about, of course he knows that this is his divine responsibility from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but still, like, he's watching his brothers and sisters who believed in him now face a lot of punishment and consequences, and his patience with that, and his patience with hardship, his patience with not having enough food in his house, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his patience with suffering, his patience with battles, his patience with people's immaturity and all the things he had to deal with in his own community, right? Patience with hate. patience with people who abused him and his own brothers and sisters and his own family. Talk about Islamophobia. I mean, the worst Islamophobia was at his time, right? So it's not just, so, take this as an individual test with what's happening in Gaza. Can I be patient with Allah as this is happening? Because a lot of people are getting frustrated. When is this going to end? So my life could go back to normal. How are you being patient with Allah? If they are being patient with Allah, how are you being patient with Allah? How can you not be patient with Allah? Yes, we are waking up every day hearing news after news and seeing image after image that are hard to get out of our minds. But this is your test. So remember, how am I showing patience? How am I showing sabrun jameel? Beautiful patience. How am I passing this test? I want Allah, as He's looking at me right now, to see someone who's passing this test, who's looking to grow during this time, who's looking to get closer to Him during this time, who's looking to be utilized during this time, who's looking to be more sincere during this time. Am I passing my test? Well, this is not the time, and I'll end with this, is not the time to check out. This is not the time to live in a bubble and put our head down and be happy as long as our lives are not affected. This is not the time to just be frustrated and just be like, why is this still happening? And obviously, like, there is that frustration. I mean, like, a frustration that is followed by you checking out and not doing anything useful. Remember, you want your emotions, if your emotions, all the pain that we feel right now, if they are not transferred into positive action, dua, prayer, charity, anything that you can do to show up, these emotions will overpower you. If these emotions that you're feeling do not lead you to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are not directed in a positive direction, they will overpower you. Just as I mentioned, that dopamine rush. If you get it, make sure you follow it with action. You learn something new, make sure you walk out of this halaqah today and you do something. You actually apply one thing you learned. That's how you become less overwhelmed in your inner space and less overpowered by negative emotions. And this is how you get unstuck spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to all pass our tests too during these times. And allow us to also be transformed during these times. So many people, thousands of people are coming to Islam. You see chaos. Look at what Allah's creating out of this chaos. You look around and you're like, what is happening? Why is all this stuff happening in the world? And you realize that it is through chaos that people see truth so clearly. And perhaps it is Allah's love. It's always out of Allah's love that He wants to guide so many people to see the truth. And it's only in chaos do people truly get guided. Because when things are easy and comfortable, people have no incentive to find the truth. So you look around and you see chaos, think about what Allah's doing for His ummah. Think about who Allah is, and think about all the good that's going to come out of this. Because there's no way that all of this is happening if good is not coming out of it. Post 9/11, look how many people converted to Islam. Look how many people found the truth. Look how many people saw Muslims in a different light afterwards, even though initially it was all like, oh, look, everyone's going to hate Muslims. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen, at the end of the day, we know that Allah's plan always comes true. The question is, what role will you have played? Because if Allah does not utilize you, He'll utilize someone else. So may Allah utilize us and allow us to be people who uphold His truth and hold on to His rope during the most difficult of times. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this time a means to us, not just people coming to Islam, but to us rectifying our own relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.